Hello again. So, take a little bit of a different road here. I'm going to go down the road of the spiritual. I'm going through one of my writings, and it says, what is our spiritual side? It says, we all have a spirit. The spirit is our direct line to God. It is our right and wrong compass. It tells us what is positive and negative. If we listen to what it is saying, it will guide us to make the proper decisions, not only for ourselves, but also those who we love. Learning to connect with our spirit can, for some, be a no brainer. It's easy for them. In others, it can be extremely difficult. But even if it's easy or hard, it takes practice, just like everything in this world. If we don't, it can be taken away. Regular ceremony, prayers, meditation, and an open heart is necessary to keep a connection to our spirit. What I have learned through my travels is that we all have one, and they are all unique. But they are also not at the same time, because this is the knowledge of good and evil. It is knowledge that we are all born with. Therefore, if we hope for this knowledge, then we are not unique. Then comes what makes us unique. All of our spirits have different abilities. We are all born with. And that part is up to us to figure out. What kind of energy do we have? How do we find our essence? I've had this a long time. Our essence is our character. It is what others see us as. We all have a main quality that is our essence. It's our connection to the past. It helps us to understand why we are who we are today. And it brings understanding to who we want to become tomorrow. When we start to connect to our essence, we start to look at ourselves. We start to question who we are, what we have become, the qualities that we carry, the experiences of our lives, and who we have to become. Looking back at my life, in times of trouble, I had moments where I just felt the need to stare in the mirror. I never really understood what I was doing. All I knew was I was not going to question spirit, so I did. I remember thinking that I was either happy with the man looking back or I was not happy with the man looking back. As I have aged, I started to understand why I felt the need for this. Our essence can be described in so many different ways. The way we choose to describe our essence is not what's important. What's important is that we are looking at ourselves. What qualities are we putting out? Is it a negative one or a positive one? Looking at our own qualities and what we are trying to fill within can be a difficult road. One of mine is a lot of my actions are for self preservation. By working in this for lots of years, I now understand that my main self preservation mechanism is giving into my fear. I would fear doing something, so I would not do it. I would not say it, and I would not listen to it. So the question then becomes, why is fear my essence? Where did it start? When did it first show up? Who instilled it in me? What can I do to overcome it? And how do I keep the recognition of when it shows up? You see, my essence was full of fear. I was a coward. I did not want to fail, so I would not try. I would not say. I would not listen. My thoughts were full of failure. My words were full of empty promises, and my actions were full of running. I was running from my fear. When our essence is full of fear, our energy starts to become turmoil. Our emotions sway from tree to tree. They become one extreme to another, extreme happiness to sadness, overjoyed to anger. We wake up in a good mood just to have a small Lego derail us. At this point, recognition is the key. We become mad at the Lego, but we need to stop and ask, am I truly mad at the Lego? Yes, the Lego hurt the bottom of my foot. Or no, this beautiful little Lego is my catalyst to realize that that I am hurt in another way. It's not the Lego's fault for my pain. It's something else. Living in that's the key. Don't stay in that anger because you stepped on the Lego. It's one of those it is what it is kind of scenarios. My fear was instilled in me from a young age. I grew up in fear. And as I grew up and finished high school, I got out in the world and felt free. I vowed to not become my parents. I then married, did all the things. I thought I was what was required. I thought I was what was required of me. I worked hard, loved harder, became a tree climber and a firefighter, but I thought I was good. The worst thing for a woman is a man who thinks he's good. Shotgun Lou. Now I feel the need to say, these are my own personal truths. This is what I was required to learn in life. My road has been difficult with so many different lessons that I have had to learn. I have had to deal with confusion, fear, anger, suffering, jealousy, greed, and so much more. But out of everything bad comes something good. I have also experienced determination, courage, humility, peace, trust, generosity, and so much more. Life is full of so much, with so many paths, so many people, and so much knowledge. In order to understand our spirit and essence, we have to look at our energy. Our energy is a daily thing that must be looked at regularly, with an open heart and a contrite spirit. Our energy is what others can see and feel. Its surface, like, have you ever met a stranger and just felt like giving them a hug because you could just feel their sadness? You have tapped into their energy and got a glance at their state of mind. The energy we have is the beginning of a journey. In order to heal, we have to take a look at our own energy daily. If we let negative energy in, it could start to overpower our essence and energy. But if we allow positive energy in, then the same could happen. There was a time in my life when my energy was out of whack. I had been married and was constantly giving and catering to her. I tried to do everything for her, was constantly doing with no breaks, never stopping. So, some parts of who I am. I'm a high energy kind of guy. I wake up and it's time to get things done. Get moving because time's a wasting. There is only 24 hours in a day. My partner at the same time was low energy. She was slow in the mornings and not a morning person at all. She liked to enjoy the cup of coffee, which is not a bad thing at all. Her and my energy was completely different. I would move and get things going. She would wake the girls. I tend to believe she would feed off of my high energy. It motivated her. She needed it, and I did not need her. I wanted her. Big difference in energy. A want and a need are completely different, both positive, but clashing. It's kind of fun to read these old journals. It's even funner to kind of share it. What I have learned for dealing with the way of the spiritual is that there is a right and wrong, positive and negative, righteousness and evil. So many ways to describe the same thing, but that's not important. What's important is the good and bad. When bad things happen, our energy becomes bad energy. When we constantly live in bad energy, it affects our essence. We start to use bad things to cope with life. When we don't recognize the bad within our essence, it can affect our spirit. When that happens, our minds close and our spirit does not become receptive to the teachings and lessons God has in store for us. The question now becomes is, how do I overcome this? This is not an easy question to answer. The answer must come from you, and only you can answer this. You will have to work at it, read, listen, and do. When I was in this position, it took many years to understand so much hope was needed to fully overcome the darkness. To overcome the darkness, it was exhausting. I eventually got to a point when I didn't even know who I was anymore, what to do, what the future will hold. I didn't want anyone to know. I isolated myself. I needed to figure this out, and it took me years just to start. I turned to spiritual podcasts and sermons, listened to audiobooks about others' lives, wrote what was on my mind, went to churches, had lunch with priests, walked with monks, and meditated with shamans. Nothing seemed to work. Nothing helped with this fear I was battling inside. Now I'm kind of in that same boat, but it's not fear that I battle. It's sadness. It's my hope has been drained, so I'm trying to fill that cup back up again. You see, I was always aware of my fear. My fears were not unmerited and not at all consuming. I always used my fear to drive me forward. Sometimes it would overtake me, and anger was its byproduct. The anger was what I used to not let the fear inside. Now I was afraid. My anger was my push forward. Whenever I was angry, I would work harder, produce more, perform better, and live. Anger was my catalyst to life. It allowed me to live so much of my life, allowed me to live, and so much of my life was lived in anger. But with every negative emotion being used, there is a price that must be paid. Mine was sadness. I paid for anger with my sadness. I always did a good job at hiding all this from those who did not know me, but those who were close to me, I could not hide the truth. I sit with fear, the fear drives. I sit with anger, the anger consumes. I sit with sadness, the sadness cannot be hidden. All truth comes to pass. When spiritual awakenings start, there is something inside that is lacking, or something that we need to come to term with. We need to make peace with whatever it is. When we don't, it gets built up. We start to look for similar situations. As humans, we tend to migrate to what's familiar. As for my story, I went right into what I grew up in. What I have learned is that when someone who grows up in abusive houses and we leave, one of two things happen. I would grow up to go right into another abusive relationship, or I would become the abuser. With a spiritual awakening, it is difficult. The reason it is because you are required to have a relationship with God. You have to look deep within and ask hard questions like who, what, when, where, why, and how. This is a good start to a relationship with God. My personal relationship with God looks like this. I was in the middle of my spiritual awakening. I didn't know what to do anymore. I was trying to pull myself out of the darkness. I was very unhappy. Everything I was not around anymore. There was fragments of who I was. All my good qualities, seemed to be gone. Like someone walked into my home, took everything, but didn't take out the garbage. I was drowning. I didn't know where to turn anymore. So it was time to go back to basics. My foundation was breaking, crumbling, and in need of repair. So I turned to God. I didn't ask him to give me something. I asked him for a relationship with him. I started to ask him questions, then started to answer them. What I came up with helped. I started to evaluate my thoughts, what I was putting in, I was getting out. He started making me responsible for my thoughts. When I started to use my thoughts responsibly, I then started to hold myself accountable for my words. And with accountability, I started to pre-think my words. With words, I then was holding myself personally accountable and responsible for all my past, present, and future actions. You see, a spiritual awakening, with my experience, doesn't really matter what direction you go. But one thing you have to do is have a relationship with Creator. I have also learned that you have to be careful who you allow what you allow in its place. Defining God is important because it becomes your personal truth. But defining who God is meant for you, and what he means for you can be very difficult. Just remember that what he brings to your life adds to it. Look at what God does for you. What qualities does he add to it? What beliefs does he add to your life? Is your views of God a healthy one or an unhealthy one? Always got to remember that God exists in all of us. We cannot shake his hand, and also remember that your relationship is between you and him. Others can influence that relationship, but ultimately it's between you and him. This is part of the path of the spiritual side. The spirit is very complex. It is something we cannot explain with any measure of physical means. It is always up for interpretation. No definitive proof on God. And people who say they have it all figured out are lying and looking for something that is missing inside. They want to gain something. This is why it is so important to be cautious about God. Others can really mess with your views of him. Bad teachers make bad students. Look for someone who is open to the interpretation of God and is willing to correct the qualities that he brings to your life. Be curious and cautious. Use discernment to find the good and bad. Listen to your spirit. Your spirit wants you to be successful. And always remember that sometimes the lessons are down the more difficult path. Don't close your mind to the lessons that God has in store for you. Be receptive to the easy path and willing for the difficult ones. The hardest path is always the most rewarding. Gerald Matthews, my grandfather. I can tell you this by experience because my life has always been difficult. Everything that has been thrown at me has been difficult. Born into an unstable home, I was the scapegoat for everyone in the house. Whenever someone was in a bad mood, I knew I would be getting it. And as a child, that was when my fear started. My earliest memories are that of fear. But this was the life I was given. This deep-rooted fear has been a major teacher in my life. It has taught me true courage, to look fear in the face and to do it anyways. Does fear overtake? Of course it does, but I have also overcome it many times. It has helped me and hindered. At some point in time, I have to just learn how to accept it in my life. It's as much a part of me as I am a part of it. Maybe I just need to use it properly. Like, be fearful of not doing what needs to be done. Extraction of blessings, that kind of thing. The fear, negative, extraction of blessing. I will need to also learn to use it like this. I need to be fearful of not being true to myself. I can only accomplish this by not caring what others will think of me. Use my fear to fight and live for those who are involved in my life. Be the man I know I can be, not just for myself, but for those who I love. I'll read some more another time.